A dark-haired girl in a blue open dress was running in an unknown direction. There was a colorful jungle around. She screamed for help with a frightened face. She turned back. There were beads of sweat on her face. Someone was chasing her. Suddenly the ground cracked near the girl, but she did not have time to react. At the same moment, many terrible hands crawled out of the ground. The skin on them was dry. They grabbed the girl by the legs, preventing her from running further. With a devastating roar, a huge green monster fell behind the girl, almost crushing her. This was the pursuer from whom she was running away. He lifted the girl with a powerful hand closer to his face. 2 huge fangs protruded from his mouth, and the rest of his teeth were also impressive in size. He finally caught his victim, who was now begging to be released. The monster asked the girl what she would do next, because all the people who challenged him soon died. He ate their fresh meat, gnawing every bone. The monster wanted to eat this girl too, eat her magnificent body, but she could only sway miserably in his hand and scream for help. Suddenly, someone from above shouted that they had come to save the beauty. The monster looked up. An unknown red-haired guy was flying towards him, who pointed his palm towards the monster and said something. A huge fiery palm formed in front of the monster and moved towards it. He did not have time to react and run away from her. At the same moment, the flame covered the monster, and all that was left of it was a dark trace, around which there was a crater in the shape of a palm. The girl was pushed in the other direction by the blast wave. The girl was briefly stunned, but soon regained consciousness. The red-haired man approached her and apologized for not coming to her earlier. She quickly rose from her knees and rushed into his arms, thanking him for saving her. There were tears on her face. The guy said that she need not be afraid of anything, because he is next to her. Then he gently touched her face with his fingers, adding that heroes were accustomed to receiving payment for their heroic deeds. They began to reach out to each other for a kiss, when suddenly, the red-haired man pulled his lips, lying on the bed in only a t-shirt and shorts. He directed his lips towards the yellow pillow, talking some nonsense during all this. The roar of thunder and lightning could be seen in the window. The wind opened it and raised the curtains. The guy woke up from the noise, sat down in the middle of the bed, and realized that it was a dream. He was upset. He remembered what happened in the dream, how he kisses this girl. Then she gradually takes off her dress, gets embarrassed, exposing her breasts, and the guy came to his senses again, all embarrassed, with a blush and sweat on his face. At the same time, lightning struck, and it was raining outside. A strange man in a purple sweatshirt walked past people with umbrellas. He did not have an umbrella. People looked and turned in his direction, not understanding what they had just seen on his face. In his hands was a large black box. The guy in the sweatshirt accidentally bumped shoulders with a blonde passerby, who got angry because of this and was about to start throwing insulting words in his direction, when suddenly shock and fear appeared on his face. He saw that there was a man under the hood with a box. There was a dry, dead face with empty eye sockets. He was missing many teeth in his mouth. The sight was terrible. At the same time, the red-haired guy could not sleep and was playing some kind of mob game on his phone. He lost. He faced very strong opponents, and this time I couldn't emerge victorious. He got angry, and with a scary and at the same time funny face, threw the phone to the side. Suddenly the doorbell was heard. The guy shouted that no one was home, but the caller did not stop ringing. A creature with a dead face, wearing a purple hoodie, stood in front of the door. The guy realized that the caller would not just leave and was already going to open the door. The creature was at the entrance. The red-haired man opened the door, but there was no one there. He started cursing, saying, "Who has nothing to do at 3 a.m.?" But then he noticed a black box downstairs. He took the box and put it on the table. The young man did not order anything, and there would have been an addressee on the parcel, but there was none on the box. He opened the box. It contained something similar to a black and red VR helmet. The guy was happy and thought that someone in the sales department had made a mistake and sent him this box. He wanted to check it out performance and something to play. Taking the helmet, the red-haired man saw that there was no charging connector on it. He pressed the only button that was on the device and put it on. A screen lit up in front of him with the inscription, "Do you want to play this game?" The guy thought that the helmet had a voice trigger and exclaimed that he wanted to play. Suddenly he began to rise to the ceiling and soar, causing him to scream in surprise. The clouds over the high-rise building where the guy lived had cleared. A column of bright light, like lightning, struck from the sky. The VR helmet remained in the apartment, and the young man moved to another place. He stood in the middle of a blue and white pedestal, along the edges of which there was a decor in the form of a dragon, and behind it there was impenetrable darkness. The red-haired man was very surprised by what happened and thought that he had died. From the pedestal there was a white road leading to a brown door. The guy decided to go towards the door. He opened it and saw a place that looked like a bar, where a woman with long white hair and a white suit stood behind the counter and greeted him. She called it 101 players and called the place Monster Kingdom. Then she added that she was the red-haired's caretaker and would give him tasks, and introduced herself as Bloom. The guy didn't understand what kind of nonsense she was talking about. He asked her again, and having learned that he was in the game, he simply did not believe Bloom's words. He assumed that he was in a dream. The girl offered to help the guy believe in it, to which he agreed and immediately received a severe slap in the face. Bloom asked if it hurt, to which the guy answered positively with anger and screaming. Afterwards, the red-haired man realized that this was all the truth and began to listen to Bloom. She started talking about the game world and its rules. The player will have to play until the end, and in any case confirm participation, and the VR helmet is protected from being transferred to others. Game time and real time are synchronized. The player himself decides whether to complete the task or not. The guy listened to Bloom and wanted to play. The girl clicked and the words "Catch a Criminal" appeared on the screen above her. The first stage has begun. Then a portrait of the criminal appeared. He was a black-haired 27-year-old guy named Zhao, who worked as a driver. In terms of difficulty, he was rank 0. The reward was 10,000 yuan. Bloom said that the stronger the target's intentions, the higher the difficulty and reward for it. Then she asked the guy to turn around. He turned and saw illusions of himself, but in different clothes and with weapons. Above them were the inscriptions: Magic Fighter, Swordsman, Spellcaster, Summoner, and Marksman. Red-haired was surprised, and Bloom explained the initial professions that the player can choose. Their characteristics will be the same as in the game that the young man usually plays. He quickly made his choice and then pointed his finger in the direction of the magic fighter. Then he came to the place of the illusion. A blue glow began to emanate from it. Bloom said that the fighter's data was downloaded into the guy's head. Tom couldn't wait to start the game. The door from which the guy came opened, and a purple-blue portal began to flash through it. The girl said that he would lead him back to the room, after which a notification about the start of the mission would be sent to the helmet. The guy entered it and really found himself in his room. The VR helmet beeped, the young man took it and put it on. The mission was activated, and immediately after it the navigation mode was activated. A map appeared in front of the guy, on which there was a target in the form of a red dot, and himself in the form of a green one. Then an inscription appeared showing the time limit, 60 minutes. Player 101 did not expect this, but pulled himself together and quickly got dressed, ready to run for anything and anywhere that night. At the same time, another plane was landing at the airport nearby. The rain had stopped. A few minutes later, a slender girl wearing a mask and sunglasses came out of the airport. Passers-by looked after her. She approached the side of the road where a car had stopped. This was the taxi she ordered. A black-haired driver was sitting in a stopped car. He asked if this was the girl who ordered the taxi. The girl answered in the affirmative and asked to be taken to Han Street. At the same time, the red-haired man ran towards his goal. He saw that the red dot on the map was moving away, and the distance between him and the target was constantly increasing. The car was still heading towards Han Street. The driver noticed that the girl had fallen asleep. He decided to turn into the forest, to a secluded place. The girl gradually woke up, and suddenly she saw in front of her the evil face of the driver, who licked his lips and was about to rush at her. The girl screamed in fear and began to ask why they were in the middle of the forest. The driver wanted to rape the girl and had already begun to reach out to her. The girl was able to quickly open the door and, throwing off her mask and glasses, ran away from the car. At the same time, the guy's timer showed 30 minutes. The red-haired man realized that there was little time left, and while running he saw a bicycle standing nearby. He quickly mounted it and ran at full speed towards his goal. The girl ran past the trees. The driver pursued her. The dark-haired one was faster and soon caught up with the girl, rushing after her from behind. The girl fell, and the driver was right above her. She began to beg for him to let her go, that she would give him money, to which the driver said that he needed both her body and her money. She started screaming even more, screaming that she knew the head of the city police. Hearing this, the driver was puzzled and the girl, feeling more confident, began to threaten him that she would tell him everything. Immediately, she received a strong slap in the face from the dark-haired man. The driver said that if he was afraid of the police, he would not have done what he was doing now, and rushed at her again. The girl tried to pull away, but the scoundrel was about to hit her again, when suddenly, at high speed, the bicycle crashed into the dark-haired driver, throwing him to the side. The red-haired one arrived on time. The girl began to beg for help from him. The driver, who was the same 27-year-old Zhao, had already managed to get up and take out a huge knife. The guy's helmet showed that this was his victim. Zhao rushed at the red-haired man with a knife. The young man intercepted and held his hand. The knife was right in front of his face. At the same moment, after touching, a blue circle began to appear under them. Afterwards, all the objects around began to disintegrate into pixels. Dark. The guy began to open his eyes and saw in front of him the same world, but seemingly digitized. There were some symbols in the air. He stood in the same circle with the dragon where he found himself, after using the VR helmet for the first time. Bloom appeared and explained that this is a virtual dimension outside of time, where the player's subconscious is located and the targets between whom the battle must take place. Suddenly, not far from the guy, a human silhouette began to materialize. It turned out to be Zhao. Then something strange began to happen to him. Scary hands with sharp nails began to appear from his mouth. He mutated. A moment later, a monstrous monster with black hair began to crawl out of it. The red-haired man was shocked. Afterwards, the monster came out completely, and Zhao's face became part of a snake's mouth, which enveloped a large and scary monster girl. The monster began to prepare for the attack, and the guy also took a fighting stance. The snake lunged at player 101, but he dodged. Later, I noticed that green steam was coming from the snake's mouth. It was poisonous. The guy didn't have time to come to his senses when another attack followed. The dark-haired monster almost crushed him. The red-haired man looked up and saw that the other monster had grown very large. Immediately, a huge hand with sharp nails struck in his direction. He dodged several blows, but one still hit him in the back. The guy was thrown away and slammed into the ground. He stood up and was surprised that after this blow he was still alive. Bloom told him to look up, and the guy saw his health bar. The girl said that the strip is usually hidden and appears only when you lose health. The snake took advantage of the fact that the guy was distracted and bit him on the shoulder. 101 player's health bar has decreased again. He felt severe pain. Poison permeated his body and his health bar was almost empty. Bloom told him that to transform, he needed to say to himself, "I crave a fight." The guy was surprised how simple it sounded. There was another attack from the monsters. It seemed that the red-haired man no longer had a chance. Their attack created a cloud of dust. As it dissipated, a silhouette began to appear. Player 101 survived and looked completely different. He had gloves on his hands, and he himself began to resemble a fighter. The poison gradually killed him, but he still intended to defeat the monster. He got into a fighting stance. Then the guy rushed at the monster. His fists caught fire. The monster wanted to counterattack and hit with all its might. But at the last moment, player 101 disappeared and immediately found himself on the side of the monster, preparing an attack. Shouting "fist bullet!" Multiple fist blows flew towards the monsters, comparable in speed to real bullets. The monsters began to be torn apart by the blows. The last blow was directed toward Zhao's head, which continued to be in the snake's mouth. It turned out that this was the main body of both monsters, and the guy, thanks to his intuition, guessed this. The monsters were defeated. The remains of their bodies began to disintegrate into pixels. The guy was heading towards Bloom. The mission was completed. A chest with money appeared in front of the guy. It was a reward. The girl explained that the money received could be spent on new equipment in the waiting room, or in real life. It's all over. The guy also began to disintegrate into pixels. He moved back to the real world. In it, the struggle between the driver and the red-haired man continued in the middle of the forest. Zhao was holding a knife that was about to point towards the guy, but suddenly the knife fell. They both regained consciousness after the game. The driver began to cry and ask for forgiveness. He fell to his knees. I couldn't even believe that this man in the game was such a terrible monster. He said that it was his own fault that he could not find a girl and control the desires of his body. He crawled on his knees and asked to be punished. The red-haired man said that the victim should punish him. The girl saw that he sincerely repented of what he had done and said that she did not want to punish him. Then Zhao ran away shouting that he would go to the police station and definitely change. The girl could not understand how he changed so dramatically. The red-haired man approached the girl, offering his jacket because it was cold outside. The girl was about to refuse when she suddenly turned and saw the face of a guy whose smile almost gave off light. She became embarrassed and accepted the jacket. He wanted to take the lady, but she refused. She said that she would call a friend and he would take her. The guy said goodbye to her and quickly rode away on a bicycle, and she just looked after him in embarrassment. Suddenly I realized that I'd forgotten to ask his name. The red-haired man came home. He sat on the bed and happily looked at his helmet. He managed to check his account on his phone, to which the amount of 10,000 yen was indeed transferred. For him, this game was like a gift from God. He went to bed. The next day the weather was clear. The trio in the form of the hunk Kai Li, the plump bespectacled Da Peng, and the girls Kia Ji discussed the idle 101 miracles. A red-haired man rode up to them on a bicycle and wished them good morning. These three were his friends. They were surprised and said that it was already lunch, not morning. He began to make excuses that he overslept because of the alarm clock at 10. Then he added that he would never play online games again. The trio did not believe him, and he decided to go with them to a place where there are no people and tell them about what happened at night. They went into the forest nearby. He showed them his VR headset. Kai Li put it on, but nothing worked. The red-haired one tried to put it on himself, but this time it didn't work either. He was surprised, because at night everything was fine, everything worked. He began to prove to them that this was not just a VR helmet, that it was created by the gods. The trio looked at him, and then turned and walked away in a different direction. He chased after them, shouting that they should trust him, and surprisingly, stopped. Afterwards, Yibo himself approached them, and saw that the guys were embarrassed about something. In front of them sat a girl with some fat guy. The girl was a slender, dark-haired beauty. The red-haired man recognized her. It was Zoe Mikey. The guys stood rooted to the spot and looked, realizing her perfection. They were surprised by only one thing. Why was some fat man sitting next to her? The guys didn't know who it was. Kia said that this is Wang An, the vice president of the student council. The guys exclaimed in surprise. Zoe noticed them and grinned sweetly, politely asking them to be a little quieter. She and Wang were teaching something. For the guys, the girl appeared in the form of an angel. She was beautiful, polite, and sweet, the real feminine ideal. They apologized to her. The guys began to say goodbye to her, and Yi thought about being in the place of that fat man. He had loved this girl for the 4th year. The guy froze a little in his thoughts, but then he remembered his friends and hurried to them. They went to the dining room. A little later in the evening, the trio of friends went to the hostel. Kai Li was rocking. Da Peng was playing on the computer. Kia Ji washed herself and came out to them in a robe. She wanted to say that it was Yibo's turn to wash, but he was not in the room. Kai said that he went to throw out the trash, and at the same time took his console. Yibo was throwing out the trash and was about to throw away his console when suddenly he heard it beep again when pressed. He was happy that it was working again. He put on his helmet, and the inscription, "Enter the game," was displayed in it. The young man answered in the affirmative. The red-haired one was immediately transported to the same place where the door and pedestal were. He opened the door, but Bloom was not there. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. It was an unfamiliar pink-haired girl. She greeted him and introduced herself as Yuen, the host of the Panda gaming platform. She also played this game, being the 102nd player. During the conversation, the players did not notice Bloom returning. She explained to Yibo that the console works when a person is alone. Otherwise, nothing will happen. Another person can use the console after the owner's death, and the last sound the console made was the system notification that a new mission was starting. Yuen has already completed one mission. While waiting for another mission, they listened to Bloom, who told them about the opportunity to buy new equipment. Red Hair chose to take advantage of this opportunity, but Yuen refused. A portal appeared behind them. Yibo entered the portal. He was interested in seeing the new weapon. He saw in front of him a warehouse of various combat gloves. He liked the way it all looked, but he was shocked by the prices, which were crazy. He looked at cheaper gloves and chose the one that cost exactly 10,000 yen. At the same time, Bloom and Yuen were talking about their own things. The red-haired man returned from the portal. The shopping phase was over. On the screen behind Bloom, the target for 101 players was highlighted. Housekeeper Liu Kui-yi, 40 years old. The reward for it was 150,000 yen. Afterwards, the target for Yuen was revealed. Fat Man Wang was there. The red-haired man recognized him and was surprised. He hoped Zoe wouldn't be in danger because of him. The guy offered to exchange missions with Yuen, but she did not agree. Her task had a higher reward. She wanted to get more money. Bloom explained to them that even if they agree, there is no way to exchange missions. The system does not allow this. Yuen promised Yibo that she would handle this fat man. Then the mission began. The red-haired man returned to real life. He was worried about Yuen's safety. A map appeared in the VR helmet. His target was not far away, and the guy ran towards it. It was dark in the city. There was no forecast of rain that evening. At the same time, in one of the apartments, a couple was getting ready to go to the cinema. They asked housekeeper Kui to look after their baby. Kui held him in her arms. She said that everything was fine and would look after the baby. She loved him. The baby's parents left, and Sui was already tired of holding this pig in her arms. She put it aside and went to watch the series. Suddenly, out of the blue, the baby began to roar. The housekeeper quickly got tired of his crying and screaming. She took him and screamed at him to stop crying, otherwise she would hit him. He quieted down for a second, but then continued to sob again. Kui looked at him with an angry look. Something bad was about to happen. At the same time, the couple decided to postpone going to the cinema. The husband received a call from work. They agreed to watch a movie next time. The wife went home. At the same moment, strange sounds were heard from their apartment. The housekeeper drowned the baby in water. The child was choking. She lifted him out of the water and he began to roar even more. Sui picked him up and dragged him into the bedroom, where she quickly found a needle. She took off the baby's pants and began to quickly poke him in the butt with a needle. In her opinion, this was education. At the same moment, my wife came in. The girl was furious. She started shouting at the housekeeper. She tried to justify herself, but it didn't help. The girl said she would report Sui to the police and pushed her away, running to her baby. The housekeeper ran up to her and grabbed her by the hair. She threw the girl aside with all her strength. Approaching the baby, she took him and pointed the needle towards his eye. The girl was afraid for her child. She said that she would not budge, just let Kui give the child back. The housekeeper began to blackmail the child's mother, telling her to give 200,000 yen and write a statement, saying that the girl had snapped at Kui, after which she would not work in their house. The girl wrote everything. When she handed over the statement, the girl grabbed the housekeeper by the hair and began to struggle. Their family didn't have that much money, and it would have been stupid to hand it over to such a person. Sui threw the baby away, and he hit his head on the floor. Then she grabbed the baby's mother by the neck and began to strangle her. She wanted to kill her. At the same moment, the red-haired man managed to appear and rushed at Sui. After touching, they immediately moved into the battle area. The housewife began to turn into a monster. The veins on her neck and face turned black. A moment later, she turned into a terrible, witch-like green monster with red hair and a head sticking out of her chest. The guy immediately transformed and took a fighting stance. The witch offered to hit the red-haired one first. She lured him. The young man was not afraid of her and rushed towards her. At the same moment, a strong sound wave rushed out from the small head on the chest. The guy was distracted by her, after which he received a powerful blow to the body. He was thrown aside and lost half of his health from the impact. He managed to dodge the next blow and take a stance. That blow was made from under the skirt, from where a huge fist appeared and rushed. The monster continued to transform. The witch became larger in size. She grew many limbs that held knives, scissors, and other dangerous objects. The guy thought about tactics for victory and rushed at the monster. He dodged a blow with a knife and wire cutters. Then he found himself behind the monster, preparing to attack. He unleashed a powerful attack from his bullet fists. The red-haired man thought he had won, but then a sound wave threw him away. Only then did the guy see that the monster also had a health bar, which even after this attack was almost full. This was followed by a blow with a hammer, which directly hit Yibo. He was in pain. His streak was almost empty. He remembered his new gloves and decided to finally use them. The next blow came from the monster. It could have been deadly, but the young man blocked it thanks to his new gloves. The monster's weapon shattered on them. Afterwards, the following instruments were used. The guy was ready to beat them off. With bullet strikes, he broke all the witch's weapons. Then the guy rushed at her with a new attack. This time, the sound wave from the small head did not affect him. He dealt the monster a fatal blow. A moment later, the monster fell and, dying, began to disintegrate into small particles. In front of Yibo. He was lucky he felt that he was about to lose. He remembered Yuen, hoping that she was doing better. He had a bad feeling. The guy began to disintegrate into particles, returning to the real world. In it, Tsui let the girl go. Afterwards, she fell to her knees and began to beg for forgiveness. She asked for punishment for herself. She bowed before the child's mother. She was surprised how Tsui changed so quickly. The mother took her child in her arms. The housekeeper did not let up, continuing to ask for punishment. Before being sent to the police, the guy suggested one idea. Tsui took the needle and began to prick herself in the butt, screaming in pain. The girl wanted to find out the guy's contact information so she could thank him later, but he brushed it off, saying that he only helped her, and then said goodbye. He went outside. The time was 20:02. He decided to run to the university and find that fat guy to find out how Yuen was doing. At the same time, Yuen began to fight with Wang. The girl had already managed to transform. She was holding a sword in her hand and was preparing to attack. Not far away in a common room, the trio was in a room. Da Ping was watching some award shows. There, the girl he liked the most, Qiu Xiaoyu, won. Before winning the competition, Peng ordered a lot of merchandise with her, and now, after winning, he could sell it for a large sum to fans. While he was saying this, Yibo flew into the room, knocking Peng with the door. He needed Kia. He asked her if she could know where Wang was. She replied that she had visited him a couple of times and explained where he lived. At the same time, Yuen was fighting with a fat man who had already managed to transform into a monster. Her armor was torn and the sword broken. In his monster form, Wang looked like a huge golden golem. The girl had little health left. Huge coins flew at her, leaving behind traces of destruction. She had no chance to survive. By that time, the red-haired man had managed to get to the dorm room in which Wang lived. He kicked the door until some guy opened it for him. Afterwards, he immediately shouted, "Where is this fat guy?" This guy was Wang's roommate. He said that about an hour ago, Wang went somewhere with a cute girl. The red-haired man asked him to call the fat man, but he did not answer. Yibo was wondering what to do since he couldn't find Wang. He hit himself on the cheek to cheer himself up. He got the idea to run to the dormitory where Zoe Mei Qi lived. He arrived there a few minutes later. He didn't know her room number, so he took a deep breath and shouted her name to the whole neighborhood. No one responded, but a girl with glasses approached the red-haired man. It was Mei Qi's roommate. She said that she was not here and offered to call her. The guy asked for Mei Qi's number. She didn't answer the phone. Suddenly, the guy noticed that Zoe got out of the car not far from them. The guy was happy. He was reassured that everything was fine with her. She said goodbye to the man who brought her. Mei's roommate called out to her. She got to talking, and it turned out that the man was a school acquaintance of the girl. The roommate said that some guy was looking for Mei. She wanted to introduce him, but he disappeared somewhere. The girls went to the dorm. The red-haired one was nervous, so he decided to slip away from them. He remembered Yuen, hoping that she was okay. Yuen was lying on the ground and bleeding. She realized that she needed to buy weapons and not be greedy. The monster was preparing his final attack. He once again launched many huge coins at her. Everyone fell into it, and there was a huge explosion. At the same time, in reality, some undressed girl in bed was screaming for Wang to let Yuen go. The fat man was strangling the girl. He said that he would let her go if she did not tell other people what she saw. Then he added that she would take nude photographs of herself and send them to him, so that if she deceived him, revenge would be nearby. Yuen suddenly screamed. She was in terrible pain. She felt that her head was about to explode. Suddenly her teeth began to fall out and her eyes became empty. Wang wanted to turn her towards him, but she turned around first of all. They saw a terrible dead face without eyes and many teeth. The skin was dry and scary. The naked girl and the fat man screamed. In the unreal world, Bloom was wiping a bottle with a blue liquid inside, numbered 100. Suddenly, an empty bottle numbered 102 fell onto the tabletop with a crash. The same blue liquid that was in many other bottles suddenly began to appear in it. Bloom took the bottle in her hands. For her it was expected. The collection was replenished with the soul of 102 players, the soul of Yuen. At the same time, Yuen's corpse was walking through the streets of the city, holding a black box in her hands. At a 5-star hotel nearby, the victorious Qiu Xiaoyu listened to congratulations from her agent, Girl Zhang. Due to personal matters, Qiu wanted to cancel the business trip the day after tomorrow. While the girls were talking, someone knocked on the door. Qiu opened the door. There was a black box next to it. The next day, the weather was clear. Yibo and his 3 friends were leaving the university. Something was bothering him. Friends noticed this. They began to call him, but he did not respond. Suddenly, a car drove up to them. Everyone around was shocked. It was a Lamborghini. A guy with long white hair came out and greeted Kai Li. Kai Li didn't recognize him at first, but then he remembered. It was Leng Yang. He said that from that day on, he would study with them at the university. Kai was happy. He added that they would be able to train as before again. Kai introduced Ling Yang to his friends, explaining that they used to practice martial arts at school and that he was the son of one of the richest people, Ling Feng. Mei Qi and his partner were walking not far from the guys. The Lamborghini caught her attention, and her roommate recognized Yi Bo as the guy who came to the dormitory. She told Mei Qi about this, but you didn't recognize him. Then she added that many people might know her from school, but she had already forgotten them. The girls left. Ling Yang said goodbye to Kai Li and his new friends, and then left. A little later, the friends went to the library, but Yi Bo couldn't find his student ID. Suddenly, someone called out to him. It was a girl with sunglasses. She greeted the red-haired man and walked up to him. He didn't recognize her. She had his ticket in her hands. The guy saw it and asked where she got it from. She said that he himself gave her the ticket. The young man still could not recognize the girl. Then she came close to him and whispered in his ear that he saved her from a pervert in the forest. The guy remembered that he couldn't recognize her with glasses. Chu introduced herself to him. She said that in the pocket of the jacket that the red-haired man gave her was a student's one. That's how she found him. They exchanged contacts. Suddenly the guy noticed that Wang was walking behind Chu a little further. He apologized to the girl. He had a lot to ask Wang, and he ran towards this fat man. He immediately suspected something was wrong and began to run away from the red-haired man. They ran to the forest where Yi Bo jumped and kicked Wang in the back. Then he fell to the ground and slid a little forward. Bo approached him and, taking him by the collar, began to ask what happened to the pink-haired girl. The fat man began to say that he had no idea what he was asking. The redhead hit him in the face. After the blow, Wang decided to say that while walking in the park, he saw some pink-haired girl turn into a zombie and then disappear into thin air. The red-haired man realized that the fat man was not saying something, and then continued to beat him further. Wang screamed for help. Suddenly, guards appeared from somewhere. One of them took Yi Bo and put it aside. The other approached Wang, who said that the guy attacked him for no reason. Yi Bo was taken away, and the fat man realized that the situation with that zombie girl and that guy was not good. A little later, the red-haired man was released. The console in the backpack made some sounds. The guy began to look for a place to enter the game. In the toilet in the nearest building, a couple was kissing in one of the stalls. Yi came into this booth, Bo, and when he saw the people, he apologized to them. In surprise, the couple quickly left the booth and ran away. The girl covered her face in shame. The guy was a little surprised, but quickly settled into the booth and put the VR helmet on his head. Before he could even enter the game, he immediately began asking Bloom about Yuan. She replied that the girl was defeated. He asked if she really became a zombie, but the man behind him answered him. It was Ling Yang. Yi Bo was very surprised. Ian was player number 99. He began to explain to the red-haired man that after losing, players turn into zombies and then disappear from this world. Bloom confirmed this. Yi Bo asked why they didn't tell him about this right away, to which the girl grinned. Out of anger, he wanted to hit her, but only hit an invisible protective field. Bloom explained that the system prohibits causing any harm to NPCs. The guy said that this game is like a trap for people. He wanted to finish this game. The girl explained to him that in this case, he too would become a zombie and die. She explained to them that she answers all the questions but does not mention them herself, since this is part of the game. She said that after receiving the black box, the fate of a person is predetermined. Ling Yang asked who is the creator of this game. Bloom replied that this is God, and that after beating the game, players will be able to meet him. The guys were shocked. Bloom asked if player 101 was ready to continue the game. He hit the tabletop with all his might, and then said that he would continue to play until the end, and then he would kick God's ass. He understood that he had no other choice. The guy asked to give him a mission with the same fat man Wang, and the girl told him to wait. The door behind them opened and the 103rd player entered. She was Chu. Yi Bo was very surprised by this. She was very glad to meet him and said that they were apparently connected by fate. She said that this was the second time she came here. Behind them, portals appeared to a room with weapons. Yi Bo advised Chu to buy the most expensive equipment. This would help her win. The girl was pleased by the guy's care. At the same time, in the men's dormitory, there was a knock on Wang's room. His partner opened the door. A beautiful girl stood there. She apologized for disturbing her and entered the room. The girl said that she thought about Wang's words and decided to do as he said. He told her to come down and wait for him. The girl left. The fat man began to get ready, and his roommate asked him why she had come. Wang replied that she needed help with the test, and that he decided to help her. Then he added that he would be back by 10 o'clock. In the game world, players have already returned after choosing a weapon. Missions has begun. Lang Yan got an office worker, Dujiguo, 36 years old, whose reward was 4 million yen. This mission was level B in difficulty. Other players were surprised by such a big reward. They were explained that starting from level B, there are people who commit more serious crimes. The mission distribution phase continued. The red-haired one got an 18-year-old student. The reward for him was 3 million yen. Chu told the guy to be careful, even though his target looked harmless and was 2 years younger than the girl. Yi Bo was surprised by this. It seemed to him that the girl looked 3 years younger than him. Chu took this as a compliment and was touched. The girls caught the fat man Wang, whose reward was 20 million yen. Yi Bo told the girl to be more careful. He wished the school's vice president had turned out to be his opponent again. They agreed to meet after completing the missions in a cafe near the university. Lang Yang wanted to tell them something important. The portal in the door opened. They said goodbye and wished each other good luck. Lang Yang returned to the real world, to his car, which was in the yard of his house. The map in his helmet showed that the target was far from him. He immediately went to her in his car. Chu regained consciousness in her hotel. She really liked Yibo and wanted to continue the game just for him. She quickly got ready and headed out of the hotel towards her goal. At that time, Yibo was already running towards that 18-year-old guy. He had a few blocks left. It began to rain in the city. Guy at school? He was sitting in a locked cage in the middle of the class. It was Jiaxing, the red-haired man's target. His hands were handcuffed and there were papers under him on the table. Someone shouted at him not to sleep. 3 people stood near the cage. His mother, father, and teacher. Mother and father told the guy that they were working hard so that he could study, and Juxing was just sleeping in class. He stayed for a second year twice. He felt pressure from other people. The image of the streamer whom he had long idolized, Zhao Mo, appeared before him. She was offended by him because he couldn't watch her streams and donate because he failed his exams. Juxing promised her that he would hand over everything and do everything. He continued to perform the test. He finished it and handed it to the teacher, to which she replied, "The guy is going crazy." Juxing took the test and saw a blank sheet. They didn't believe him. His family and people around him didn't believe in him. He begged them for something, but they didn't want to listen to him. He did test after test, but they became empty again. The guy got angry and hit the table with his hands. Suddenly he came to his senses, the nightmare was over, and in real life he shouted how he hated everyone. He realized that he had a dream. Juxing was in his room. Someone was lying next to him. It was the corpse of his father, into whom the guy stuck a knife. The past would not let him go. He hated everyone around him. He started kicking his father's corpse. A woman was screaming from the door next to him. It was his mother tied to a chair. The duct tape around her mouth came undone. She realized that the son had killed his father. He shouted at her and tried to find out the password for her bank card. He wanted to donate money to streamer Xiao Mo. His mother started screaming about how she raised him, how hard she tried, but in the end she got it. Juxing was tired of hearing people scold him. He became more and more angry. He told his mother everything he thought about him and his father, how they raised him. The mother knew that they had spent a lot of effort raising their son, but the son could not understand this himself. The guy began to strangle his mother, wanting to kill her. She tried to say that she wouldn't give him anything. She wouldn't give him the password for her bank card and the rest. He took a knife and was about to stab her, when suddenly the red-haired man came and knocked down the front door. Juxiong and his mother were shocked for a second. The guy asked the red-haired man what he wanted. He replied that Juxiong should stop doing nonsense. The guy didn't even listen to him and was already rushing at his mother with a knife, but Yi Bo also made a jerk in his direction. The guy swung his knife towards the red-haired man, hitting his hands. The wounds were shallow, but the blood still began to flow. Juxiong then rushed in with other attacks, but Yi Bo was able to dodge him and touch him, throwing him to the side. The movement into the game world has begun. Juxiong immediately began to transform. A bunch of chains came out of his mouth and rushed towards the red-haired man. There were more and more chains. The father's killer continued to turn into a monster. His flesh began to tear into pieces, and he lost his human appearance. Juxiong transformed into a skeleton with steel chains sticking out of his skull. Pieces of paper were flying around him, and he had a book in his hands. The red-haired man also took advantage of the moment and activated combat mode. He took a stance, preparing to attack. The skeleton managed to grab one of the guy's legs and throw him to the side. Afterwards, the monster hung the young man upside down. The monster tore out one page from the book, which tore into many small pieces of paper. He threw them towards the guy. They began to cut Yibo's skin at greater speed, circling and returning again and again. This went on for some time until the young man finally remembered the properties of his new gloves. He activated the fire mode. The papers around were burned, but he managed to break the chain. Climbing out of his bonds, he prepared to attack. The skeleton continued to attack, trying to immobilize the guy again. He dodged, but some attacks worsened his control. At one point, the chains hurled their sharp parts at the player, but he crushed them. Yibo then counterattacked the monster and destroyed it. Such a strong opponent was very fragile. A chest with a reward appeared in front of the red-haired man. If he had not bought new gloves for 150,000 yen, he would not have survived this time. Returning to reality, Yibo was able to put Juxiong on the floor. Afterwards, he, having come to his senses a little after the defeat, fell to his knees in front of his mother. He began to ask for forgiveness from her, but she did not want to accept her son, who became a murderer. Then Juxiong grabbed the knife and was about to plunge it into himself. The mother screamed in fear and surprise, but the red-haired man managed to kick the knife out of his hands. Yibo then shouted and hit Juxiong in the face. Afterwards, he began to explain to his son's mother that he had changed and would not do anything bad to her. The mother did not know what to do. She was confused. She was hurt by everything that happened. She didn't know what would happen next. Yibo helped her understand that her son would change, that soon everything would get better. Juxiong crawled up to his mother on his knees again. He sincerely asked for her forgiveness. He promised her that they could find happiness again. They hugged. Both were crying. The red-haired man said goodbye to them and, going outside, decided to call Chu. She didn't answer the phone right away, but then greeted him. She was pleased with the attention from Yibo. She said that she had just arrived at her goal. The guy said that he would soon come running to her and wished her luck in dealing with this fat man. She said goodbye and gave a kiss before hanging up the call. The guy was surprised and embarrassed by this. Even though it was through a screen, for him it was like a kiss. By that time, police cars had already arrived and came to pick up Juxiong. Yibo believed that this family would sooner or later be able to start a new life. Chu was thinking about how she could get to Wang's house. She had one idea. In Wang's house, there was a girl in underwear who had recently come to his dorm. He took pictures of her and said that if she wanted more money, she should undress completely. The girl was embarrassed, but she undressed more and more. Wang told her that everything would remain confidential, that everything was fine, and so on. He asked the girl to take off her bra. She hesitated, but then did it anyway. The fat man was taking pictures of her. Suddenly, someone rang the doorbell. Wang went down, looked through the peephole, and saw a courier girl who was dressed as Yu Chu. He didn't order anything, so he thought it was a package for Brother Long, the owner of this house. He opened the door for her. Chu touched his hand and they began to move into the game world. Wang stood opposite the girl, ready to transform at any moment. At one point, his body was divided into two parts, between which a golden core remained. It began to change shape and transformed into a vile golden golem. The girl also began to transform, and flames flared up around her. Her clothes changed. She had a bag with golden cards, one of which she took out. Chu was a summoner. There were strange symbols on the map, some kind of pentagram. The girl activated the card. Another similar symbol appeared in the sky, glowing red. A red column of light flew down from the symbol, after which a fiery, cute animal formed on the ground. His name was Xiao Di. The golem decided to make the first attack. Coins flew out of it, which quickly headed towards Chu and her animal. They were right on target. But later it turned out that the girl was able to block them all. There was a shield around her. Then she put it away. The animal jumped out of Chu's hands. He got into an attacking position and small fireballs began to appear around him. Then they all rushed straight towards the golem. This attack took some of his health away. He quickly came to his senses. New coins began to crawl out of his back, which again rushed towards Chu. She managed to activate the shield. Her animal decided to counterattack, and fireballs flew at the golem's coins. This caused a strong explosion. The animal had exhausted all its strength, and the girl decided to return it back to the map. Then she decided to get a new card and summoned a firebird that looked like a chicken. She, with a quick jerk, headed towards the monster and cut off his left hand. She was already flying back for a new attack. The golem made a shield of coins in front of itself, trying to protect itself from the bird. But she decided to spew out flames and thereby melted the coins. The golem was also hit, and there was nothing left of it. A large column of flame blew it out of the way. The battle ended, and a chest with a reward appeared in front of the girl. She gradually returned to the real world. In it, Wang received a strong slap in the face from Chu. He realized his insignificance and asked the girl to punish him. At this moment, Brother Long approached them with a girl. Wang shouted at her not to borrow money from his brother, because after that, she would have to take nude photos due to blackmail. The girl and Long were shocked. Long approached Wang and grabbed him by the collar, demanding that he explain these words. The girl shouted that she no longer wanted to deal with Long and then ran away. Then he got angry and hit Wang. He continued to curse and beat his brother, but then Chu intervened. She hit Long with the box she was holding. He was a little stunned and fell to the side, but then stood up and took out a knife. Wang wanted to help him, but Long did not want to accept this help and only wanted to kill his brother and Chu. He rushed at the girl with a knife. Wang tried to stop him and was stabbed in the cheek with a knife. Blood began to flow from the wound. He didn't expect his brother to do this. Long then headed to Chu again. But this time Yibo's foot flew into Long's face, and he jumped and kicked him with all his might. He fell to the ground. The red-haired man ran up to him and began to hit the offender Chu in the face. The red-haired man asked Wang to quickly find a rope to tie Long while the police were heading towards them. Chu was glad that Yibo returned. He came on time and saved him. She kissed him on the cheek and thanked him. At this moment, Wang approached with a rope. They quickly and tightly tied up the beaten Long. Afterwards, the red-haired man decided to slap the fat man for the death of Yuan and told him to change in prison and stop being the person he was before. The police were arriving and would soon take the brothers to prison. The clock showed 9 o'clock. Chu and Yibo got into the car and headed to the establishment where they agreed to meet Lang Yang. 20 minutes ago, Lang Yang was still racing towards his goal in a Lamborghini. His goal was nearby. He turned the corner. In one of the cars nearby, a guy was having sex with his girlfriend. Suddenly, a woman's body fell from the roof onto the car. The glass shattered to the sides. The girl and the guy were not affected. Lang Yana at that moment was passing a meter away from the wrecked car. The guy and the girl got out of the car. He got angry and started screaming because his car crashed. He didn't care about another person's death. Someone's silhouette could be seen on the building from where the corpse fell. This, apparently, was Ian's goal. At that moment on the roof, the girl screamed that she did not need an apology, but her living mother. The man standing on the edge of the roof told her that the girl's mother despised him. She did not accept it due to her poor economic condition. The girl could not believe that her mother could say this. Before the girl returned from work, the guy talked with her mother. This was about half an hour ago. The man's name was Xiao Do, and the girl's mother wanted him to fully cover the costs of girl's wedding and a wedding gift of 400,000 yen. Then she added that her daughter Jin needed a car for 200,000. She only talked about money. The mother was ready to give the guy her daughter just for it, literally, to sell her child. The guy was nervous. He didn't have that much money. He called his mother for advice. She shouted at him and told him to refuse and never agree. She explained to him that his beloved's parents were Herods, and that they did not think about the happiness of Xiao and their daughter. The man was confused. He didn't know what to do. His parents had already mortgaged their pension for the wedding, but he could do nothing. He felt useless. The mother hung up. After that, he immediately received a call from work. His boss said that due to budget cuts, the company began laying off employees. The boss and Xiao were fired. The phone fell out of the man's hands and tears appeared in his eyes. He told his beloved mother that he had become unemployed. She sighed with relief and said that she was glad that the wedding did not take place. She didn't believe in Xiao as a person. He fell to his knees in front of her, promising to find a job and pay for everything, but the woman no longer believed him. She devalued all his efforts and what he did for her daughter for the last 4 years. After hearing this, Xiao grabbed the woman's legs and, lifting her, brought her to the balcony. At this moment, Jin went home. The next moment, Xiao threw his lover's mother off the balcony. She fell on the car and died. Jin screamed in fear and ran to the balcony, grabbing the fence. The man raised the girl and said that he was ready to give her his life. Xiao told all this to his beloved on the roof. Tears appeared on his face again. He said that he no longer wants to live because today he committed the most terrible thing and, one might say, lost his beloved, for whom he lived. He was about to jump when suddenly Yang shouted not to do this. Xiao didn't know who it was. He told the guy that he had nothing to worry about in this life. After these words, Yang took his beloved Xiao by the neck. None of them expected this. Yang began to squeeze her neck. Xiao got angry and rushed towards him. At that moment, the white-haired man pulled the girl aside and touched the man. The transfer to the game world has begun. They stood opposite each other. Yang tried to explain something to Xiao about morality and the law, but he was not going to listen to him. The man began to transform. He wanted to quickly kill his opponent and then commit suicide. A moment later, he turned into a huge toad with a house tied to his back. Yang also transformed into a fighting form. He was a swordsman. The toad immediately attacked him, spitting huge hot bubbles. Ian dodged them, but then another one flew at him. There was no time to escape, and he cut it with a sword. During this, he launched a wave of energy towards the toad, but it also reflected it with a bubble. The guy's sword cost 100 million yuan. It was an incredibly powerful weapon. Suddenly, huge cannons appeared from the windows of the house on the toad's back, which immediately fired missiles aimed at Yan. But this attack did not cause any damage to the guy. He cut through all the shells. Yang then quickly jumped towards the toad, wanting to make the final attack. The toad did not have time to attack him. The guy cut it and destroyed it. In the real world, Xiao fell. He began to say that with the help of suicide, he wanted to avoid his punishment, his guilt. Yang told him to call the police and surrender, and then added that he and Jin were unlikely to be happy. They did not know how to love. Afterwards, he left the couple alone, wishing them luck. The lives of these people were filled with new difficulties that they had to overcome together. A little later, Ian arrived at the cafe where he agreed to meet with other players. The guy quickly joined them. He wanted to tell about the hidden installations that he could discover in the game. One of these settings was that the monetary reward was transferred not to a bank account, but to the person's messenger. Ian tried to find out where the money was being sent from, but couldn't find any data. It turned out that the balance in real life and in the game are synchronized. Because of this, Yang was able to purchase the most expensive weapons. He was a very rich man. Afterwards, the white-haired one said that the game tests them by choosing a variety of players. He said the key to survival will be overcoming the greed of players who usually chase the highest reward. He then added that the bottles behind Bloom were filled with the souls of losing players. Only the bottles with the numbers of Yibo, him, and Chu were not filled. He told his new friends that before that I was familiar with fashion players, numbers 98 and 100. But soon they disappeared, and their bottles with numbers were filled with souls. According to his guess, the god who is the creator of the game is actually the devil, and all players are just toys for him. Yang advised them to be careful and make preparations. Yibo remembered Kai, who could teach him many techniques. The three became even closer friends. They realized that they were in the same boat and had nothing to hide from each other. The red-haired man extended his hand to Ian. They shook hands and formed a team. Bloom saw all this from the outside on her screen. These were her favorite players. Suddenly, a man in a green suit and top hat walked through the door. His name was Gula Shi. He was Bloom's colleague and also assembled a team of the best players. He came in to say that his team was already assembled and a really interesting game would soon begin. Then there was a knock on the door. It was a new player. La Shi immediately disappeared. An old man in a traditional outfit entered the door, who did not understand where he was or what was happening. At the same time, Ian was returning by car to his home. His older brother was at home with some girl. Young told him that his father told them not to invite different celebrity girls into their house. Afterwards, he went to his room. The brothers did not like each other. In another part of the city, Chu led Yibo to his house. They thanked each other for their help and said goodbye. Near the front door, there was a photograph of the red-haired man's mother, and next to her there was a small altar with incense sticks. Yibo went out to eat. Agent Chu could not find peace for herself. Attempts to reach the girl were unsuccessful. Suddenly Chu entered the room. Her agent yelled at the girl because she didn't say where she had gone. She was really worried about her. Afterwards, she said that the entertainment industry has been going through bad times lately. Last night, one of Chu's acquaintances, Jasmine from DB Company, hanged herself. Chu cried. The agent told her that this happened because many people hated her. She was told that she was not worthy of being a leader. This was written in Jasmine's suicide letter. That's why the agent was so worried about Chu. The next day, some fat man in his shorts sat in a chair and looked at something. He took the phone and looked at the news. In it, he saw news about Jasmine's death. He chuckled at the news. He went to the computer and decided to write about this news to some group. There, they were already discussing and rejoicing at Jasmine's death. This guy and the people in the group were among those who harassed Jasmine and other people on the internet in all sorts of ways. They were happy to know each other, that they could hate and bully others, driving them to suicide. At the same time, the red-haired man's trio of friends were in the dorm room. Everyone was doing their own thing. Da Peng hung a poster with his favorite idol. He really liked her smile. Suddenly, the red-haired man burst into the room. He needed Kai. He came to him with a request to learn martial art. Kai happily accepted his friend's offer. Kia was watching some kind of game match at that time. Yibo approached her and asked which teams were playing. They were KPP and DBC. The winner could join the annual finals. There was a female gamer on the DBC team, which was extremely rare in esports. In another part of the city, a fat guy in shorts was playing and watching the same match. In the game, that girl, Li Jin, fell into a trap and was killed. The fat guy's favorite team was losing. This angered him. In his opinion, she was ruining the team. The girl felt bad. She didn't want to let her team down. The fat guy wanted to do everything to kick Jin from his favorite team. He began writing to the group members, wanting to subject them to cyberbullying. Kaya and the red-haired man watched the match. Then he turned and saw Purga standing next to the poster. He recognized Chu on it and told Peng that they had a good walk with her yesterday and became friends. Peng didn't believe it. He told him to Google who it was. The red-haired one wrote her name in the search. He was shocked. The young man did not know that she was such a popular girl. The next day at the DBC team office, Jin was talking with her coach. She apologized for the unreasonable expectations. Jin asked to be fired. She herself did not believe in the victory of the team with her in its composition. There was a knock on the door, and then the rest of the team burst in. They shouted that on their social media pages. Networks throw mud at them all. Jin felt guilty about this. She did not want to interfere with her team. Tears appeared in her eyes. She wanted to leave quickly and said that she would return in 2 days. In the evening, the girl was lying in her bathroom. This was the only thing that could help her. Suddenly, someone rang her doorbell. At first, the girl didn't pay attention, but then she shouted that she would come over now. The zombie grandfather called her, holding a black box in his hands. The girl opened the door and took this box. Bloom at that time was wiping a bottle with that grandfather's number. She expected more from him, but he immediately lost. She needed to gather the team further. The next day, Kai and Yi Bo were preparing for training. The muscle man told him to run 20 kilometers to the martial arts palace where they would train. The red-haired man was shocked by what he heard. But suddenly, out of nowhere, Yi Bo's beloved came and for some reason turned to Kai. She politely asked for Ian's contact information. She needed them because Ian was involved with many charities, and the circle she was in needed his help. Kai gave her Ian's contact information. Afterwards, the muscle man immediately ran towards the palace, constantly urging Yi Bo. At that moment, the fat guy was at home and reading an incomprehensible manga. His mother called him to eat. She got him. Afterwards, he was angered by the author of the manga, who constantly posted 10 pages of chapters and then also asked for money for this creativity. Afterwards, the fat guy went to eat. His mother asked how he was doing with his job search. She said that her son was already 30, and she was 56, and this could not continue indefinitely. He had to find a job. He got angry with his mother and hit the table with his hands. He started quarreling with his mother. He said that she didn't understand him, that he didn't need her money and other nonsense, and then went to his room. Tears were running down the mother's cheeks. At that moment, the red-haired man was already barely dragging his feet. He could not catch up with Kai. Then he saw the steps leading to the palace and almost lost consciousness. He climbed them. He had enough strength. Then that palace, the magnificent temple of Tao, appeared before the guys. Suddenly, a masked man flew out of nowhere at Kai and made a thrust with a sword in his direction. The jock was lucky to dodge. Afterwards, the unknown person immediately made a sweeping attack with his sword. Kai managed to dodge this attack, after which he immediately counterattacked with a blow to the body, but the masked man quickly came to his senses and stepped aside. They stood opposite each other. The battle was just beginning. They rushed at each other with attacks, when suddenly, someone shouted at both of them to stop this, after which 2 blows were struck at the fighters. They were thrown away and slammed into the walls. It turned out that it was the fighter's teacher. They, in turn, bowed to him. Then the unknown person took off his mask. It was Ian. He introduced Yibo to the teacher and said that he would also study with them. The fat guy was flipping through the news. Suddenly he saw that one of the streamers under the nickname Polar Forest was raped on the way home. This news made him laugh. He wrote to the group that he wanted to put pressure on her, and they began writing terrible things to her on social media, networks. Meanwhile, the teacher asked Yibo to take off his shirt as he examined the boy's body, checking his physical fitness. Afterwards, he said that the guy had an average upper body and well-developed leg muscles. The teacher accepted Yibo as a student, and he was delighted. A little later in the evening on the subway, a boy was playing a video game console and waiting for his train. A little further from him stood a beautiful woman in a dress, but her face was filled with sadness, began to arrive. Suddenly, unexpectedly for everyone, she threw herself under him. Her phone was left on the floor. It turned out that it was the streamer Polar Forest who was bullied on social networks. She could not stand the slander and chose death. At the same time, Jin was sitting at home and playing something on her phone. The console next to her vibrated and she decided to enter the game. She greeted Bloom. She had already completed several tasks and spent the rest of the time training in esports. There were 2 portals in the room. Other players chose weapons. They came out. They were players numbered 109 and 117. Their goals, which were rank B in difficulty, were displayed in front of them. Then they left. Jin went to choose a weapon. At that time, the fat guy was sitting at the computer. Someone from a group of his acquaintances wrote that Polar Forest committed suicide. This news surprised him a little. Jin returned after choosing a weapon. Her target was displayed on the screen. She just happened to be that fat guy whose name was Fei Dao.